Now moved to the caves of Keash, and we're in South Sligo, just a little bit outside Ballymote. And we're here on the side of a cliff, and this is Keash Mountain. And there's a whole series of caves here. And I'm joined by Sam Moore, who's an archaeologist, and Sam's going to tell me about, you know, what's so interesting and important about these caves, Sam.
Well, thanks very much, Tamlin. These are an amazing collection of caves. There's 17 of them. And I think the most striking thing about them is that you can see them for a long distance. You know, there's quite big cave mouths, and you can see them for miles. If anybody ever drives from the airport at Knock past Tubbercurry and you look this direction, you can actually see the caves even from that distance. So they're very striking. The caves themselves were formed, over millions of years from water flowing through the limestone. Water dissolves the acid in the water, dissolves the limestone over a very slow period. So these have been truncated, they've been cut by an ice sheet moving by the side of the mountain. So you get these big cave mouths. So the caves take different forms. So these are really spectacular. So they were formed, the mountain itself was formed about 300 million years ago, a little bit more, when all of this was actually underneath a warm, shallow tropical sea. And so limestone is dead marine life. But over millions of years then, water trickling through the rock makes these caves. You would have had streams flowing out that become relic over time. A big glacier during the Ice Age, more than 10,000 years ago, carved this cliff face off the side of the mountain, exposing these big cave mouth entrances.
And we can still see that there's water permeating through.
Yeah, you can still see, yeah, it's still...
And did people ever live in these caves, or were they, what kind of way did humans?
Okay, so all around the world people see caves often as not as otherworldly entrances, going into the underworld, a place of the supernatural. So in a lot of world mythologies you get lots of stories about creatures living in caves, or monsters or demons or all kinds of things. But so people in Ireland in prehistory didn't live in caves. They seem to be using them for religious reasons and often depositing their dead in them. In this particular caves, the earliest evidence we have for that is during the Celtic period, when Arden tools were introduced to Ireland. At the latter part of that period, just before Christianity and St. Patrick came, there's evidence of people depositing human remains here in the form of teeth. So there's human teeth, dog teeth and horse teeth all found at some of these caves. So we think it's something to do with their religious belief at the time, because dog and horses were often seen as religious animals. But then later, about 1,200 years ago, people seem to be actually living in the cave during what we call the early medieval period. And we found things like a Viking-style bone comb, a sickle made out of Arden, and other objects, and evidence of people eating and cooking food near cave entrances.
So me and Sam have decided to explore some of the caves up here, and you can see how dark and gloomy and a little bit spooky this is.
Spooky.
Sam, and
Yeah.
there have been numerous tales about these caves.
Yeah.
I have heard tell of some hideous hags.
Indeed, there's 3 hideous hags. There's lots of stories about the caves of Keash, but the most famous one is about the story of the 3 daughters of a guy called Conaron Mac Imidale, who was a member of the Tuatha Dé Danann. And Fionn McCool and the Fianna are hunting in the area of Keash Corn, and the noise of the dogs annoy Conaron Mac Imidale and his 3 hideous daughters. And the daughters they have magic, and they have these magic threads that they wrap around Fionn McCool and the Fianna. and the Fianna are powerless to resist her. So the hags captured the Fianna and the Fianna, wrapped them up in these magic threads and dragged them into the darkness of the caves. So, but fortunately, Gull MacMorna helps Fionn McCool and comes along and kills the three hideous hags and releases Fionn and the Fianna. So I think we'll be okay. But the hags, there's a great description of them. I'll read it to you. It says, Finn and Conan reached the cavern's edge and perceived the three hideous hags who had busied themselves at its entrance. Their three coarse heads of hair all dishevelled, their eyes rummy and bleary and red, their three mouths black and deformed, and in the gums of each evil woman of them a set of sharpest, venomous and curved fangs. Their three bony jointed scraggy necks maintaining their heads upon those formidable hags. Their 6 arms extraordinarily long, while the hideous and brutish nail that garnished every finger of them resembled a thick-butted, sharp-tipped ox horn. Their 6 bandy legs, thickly covered with hair and fluff, supported them. So they sound pretty hideous, so hopefully we won't bump into them.
That's just the story.
Yeah.
And Cormac MacArt, the High King of Ireland, he was reared here in the caves by a she-wolf.
Yeah, so Cormac MacArt is this legendary High King of Ireland. And his mother gave birth to him at a well just at the bottom of the cliffs here, and she had passed out, and when she woke up her son had disappeared, her baby son. And years later her and her brothers found wolves, a pack of wolves, and there was a child running with the wolves, and it transpired that a she-wolf had stolen Cormac and had reared him in a cave here. So there's lots of amazing stories.
So there has been evidence of fires from charcoal has been found here. So we know to a certain extent that people were lighting fires in these caves. And were they coming here, do you think, for ritual purposes, to do with the Lunasa festival or?
Okay, yeah.
Sunday?
Yeah, I mean it's a really good question. We know that people were using the caves to put ritual offerings in. As part of some kind of religious ceremony. So there's teeth from the late Iron Age kind of Celtic period. So before Christianity arrived, people were leaving offerings in the caves. But it seems that maybe 1,200 years ago, about the 8th century AD, there was 9th century AD, that there was people living in the caves, maybe temporarily. So they left they were lighting fires, cooking food. So in the excavations from the beginning of the 20th century, archaeologists found charcoal and fires and burnt animal bones and evidence of cooking, but also things like bone pins, an Arden sickle for cutting things with, and a Viking style comb that they'd acquired from somewhere, maybe 10th century. So people were living up here, but in the distant past it seems people were much more wary of the caves. So that's probably where a lot of the stories originate from. And we know that people were celebrating coming to the caves at the last Sunday in July for a big assembly. And people would gather bilberries, visit the caves and climb to the top of the mountain and leave a stone on the cairn. So that's the same day that people climbed Croagh Patrick at the last Sunday in July. So this was the biggest assembly site in Sligo. Back in the 20th century, early 20th century, late 19th, yeah.
And I can see why people would be attracted here. It's really magical, spooky place.
Yeah, but
really
it's stunning.
interesting.
Yeah, fantastic.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Sam.
My pleasure.